college football playoff tiers. I say this every single show just because I'm not married to the label playoff tiers. Got some good name suggestions from y'all, but let me know what else we can call this. I like playoff tiers. It's fitting. Is it the most creative, most fun title in the world for us to call this segment? Not necessarily. So again, send them to me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Pickell. Also subscribe to the channel and let me know within the comment section what we want to call this segment. All right, it's the People's College Football Show, so let us know. So in the playoff penthouse, got a few teams here. Not a ton of movement from last week, full transparency. If you're new to this segment, the playoff penthouse is the teams that we feel real good about right now at this point in the college football season. This is not in order, but I will go with the team that I have right now in my number one spot in our college football playoff picture rankings, which is also a segment we do on Sunday, so go check that out. But I got Texas as the top of the playoff penthouse, just probably chilling in a lazy boy. Maybe they got their feet on the ottoman. I don't know what they're doing, but the Texas Longhorns, man, I think you can make an argument they are as complete as any football team in America. Once Quinn Ewers is back in the lineup, they will be as dynamic on offense as any team in America. They have the most impressive win of this entire season to this point right now, okay? Going to the big house, kicking in the door. I mean, pretty much just walking in your big house, taking over your big house with what they did against Michigan. Texas, there's not a lot to say here. We're going to see more of them as we progress here. I cannot wait for that game October 19th when they host Georgia. But Texas, feel pretty confident. Even if they were to drop that game against Georgia, feel pretty good about where they sit right now in the college football playoff picture. College football sickos, make sure you're locked in right here to the Andre YouTube channel. The best way to be locked in by being subscribed. We appreciate y'all in advance. Georgia. Say, JD, Georgia, you're not worried about the Kentucky game? I'm not batting an eye at the Kentucky game. Because going into the week, we knew there was the possibility now. There's a lot of external factors that could have made that a tricky one for Georgia. Road SEC opener. Georgia, for whatever reason, seems to struggle in their road SEC opener. The fact that Kentucky was limping into that game after just getting beat the heck out of them from South Carolina. Georgia, that they were wandering into that game after pretty much cruising the entire time this season and not having played a true road game just yet. I'm not worried about Georgia. They have some championship traits, I think, to be able to respond in that game. Say what you want about Mark Stoops not punting, this, that, and the other. I'm not worried about it. I think Georgia's going to be more than fine. To me, they're still very much so a college football playoff team. They go to Alabama next week. I mean, that's going to be the show of the Week 5 slate. Not worried about Georgia. However, if they do come out the way they came out against Kentucky in Tuscaloosa, yeah, there's going to be some issues. But even if they drop that game, I'm not worried about Georgia in the slightest. Now, Ohio State, just kind of hanging out. It's a little bit quiet out there in Columbus. Almost too quiet. So far, I mean, they haven't really played anybody. There's a lot of teams that haven't really played anybody and had some issues. No notes so far. I mean, scored over 50 in both games. The game that we're watching right now is not going to be until October to learn more about Ohio State. I know you go to Michigan State before that, but the Iowa game to me, October 5th in Columbus, is going to be the best filter for us around Ohio State. So as of right now, nothing that we've really learned new about them, but it's encouraging to see dominant teams from a roster perspective look dominant when it comes to actually playing the game. So Ohio State definitely very firmly still in our playoff penthouse. Kind of the same deal with Miami. Again, not a ton of movement because a lot of these teams were off last week, Ohio State being one of them. Miami was not off. They absolutely dragged somebody else. I mean, pretty much par for the course right now for Miami in lesser competition. There's a swag there right now for them. Like that Florida game, I cannot get that out of my memory. I think we need to account for that now. Seeing Miami in the way that they are, I think it was Ball State who they rolled past. It just came to me. Seeing Miami look the way they're looking now, going back to the Florida game, I'm all over the place in terms of my thoughts around Miami. Rolling Ball State, rolling Florida A&M, that's encouraging. The Florida game, I cannot dismiss what I saw from Cam Ward, seeing his heart rate at a resting level against a team that had everything to play for, and they were at home. What I was saying before, I think there's a certain swag about Miami that they've been missing. And I think that swag comes from the top down with Mario Cristobal and I think Shannon Dawson and all that. But I also think within that locker room, Cam Ward, I think the way that he is just has just a killer instinct from everything I can tell from him so far, Miami's going to be a problem for the rest of the college football landscape. I think they're the best team in the ACC right now, and I don't think that's really up for debate as of week 4 in the college football season. I cannot wait to see Ole Miss play somebody. They play Georgia Southern this week. They host Kentucky the week after. It's kind of like Ohio State. What do you really say? Like, defense hasn't allowed a touchdown. Jackson Dart is just putting up hilarious stats every single week. He hasn't had a week where he's thrown for less than 370 yards. I don't care if it's Pop Warner. I don't care if it's JV football. I don't care if it's the SEC. I don't care who you're playing against. 370 yards every single week, that's impressive. Some folks will say, you're stat padding, you're this, you're that. Y'all, I do not care. Jackson Dart is spinning it. The defense looks great. Ole Miss, as of right now, to me, it looks like a college football playoff team. Now, this is a team that I have, they're definitely still in the penthouse, but they are maybe up against the wall a little bit, kind of leaning on the front door. There's a chance they're not in the playoff penthouse this time next week, and that's Utah. Right now, they're still my pick to win the Big 12 and get into the college football playoff. However, didn't have Cam Rising last week. Still got it done. I mean, it wasn't a concerning game by any stretch of the imagination. Still got it done, but like this game at Oklahoma State now, we're going to learn a lot. I picked Utah to win that game. But if they lose to Oklahoma State now, this throws the Big 12 into a blender, which would be very Big 12-ish of them to do that. So those are my teams in the playoff penthouse. We'll recap this at the end of this longer segment. But if you're watching the one-off video, those are the teams we feel real good about right now as we head into week 4 of the college football season as it pertains to their chances to making the college football playoff. So here's where it gets a little bit more juicy, man. Bubble Central. Who are the teams that we like a whole heck of a lot? We're not sure about just yet if they're going to be a playoff team, and we haven't seen enough maybe just yet to put them in the college football playoff penthouse as of right now. But Tennessee, man, every single week I have to fight my better judgment to not put them in the penthouse. If they have a definitive win at Oklahoma, they will be moved up. Now notice the word I said there, definitive. I want to see Tennessee look the way that I expect them to look offensively. I want to see them score in the, if not low 40s, high 30s against Oklahoma. That would say a lot about the gears that this offense has. I feel about Tennessee the way that you feel about, your significant other before they meet your parents. You like them a lot. Everything's going good so far, but there's that test that you have to have them pass, whether it be your parents, whether it be them hanging out with your friend group, whatever it is. Like, you feel good about it, but you want to see them pass that test. So that to me is Tennessee right now. I want to see them pass that test before I put them into the playoff penthouse. Now, prediction-wise, I still have them as a college football playoff team when all the dust settles. Want to see them pass that test. Oregon, they reassured me last week, still on the bubble right now. My question is, can they build from that Oregon State game? Because if you're taking a look at the big picture, I kept saying I'm not selling my stock. I still like Oregon. Idaho game didn't worry me. The Boise State worried me a little bit more. I want to see if they're able to carry over that Oregon State win because they beat the brakes off them. I mean, 49-14. If they couldn't get up for an Oregon State game on the road, rivalry game, a lot of energy there. Like, if you couldn't, draw a line in the sand for that game, we would have had major concerns. But does this win and the way they won that football game, does that pacify them or does that make them more hungry? Is it like good. All right, now we can breathe a little bit. We looked how we're supposed to look. Or is it, okay, that's how it feels. There's some muscle memory there for us as a football team. Now we go. Curious to see how that looks, but I think overall Oregon, are they more hungry from that win? If they are, look out, because the roster is up there with the best in college football. All right, Oregon, I think, has the chance now to be one of those teams that goes on a tear and obviously ends up in the college football playoff. As of this week, though, need to see more. Still have them on the bubble. Penn State, they were off last week. At USC, October 12th, keeps getting more and more interesting, especially if USC beats Michigan like I expect them to. I just want to see some validation around the Penn State offense. Is that too much to ask for? The defense, the way they looked against Bowling Green, I'm not too concerned about right now. It's not good, but I'm not overwhelmingly concerned because of how much talent they have on that side of the football. Have Kent State this week, then they have Illinois. All right, both of those in Happy Valley. Illinois now, maybe they're not going to be a juggernaut in the Big Ten, but they're going to be a tough out defensively. So how Penn State looks these next 2 weeks, I think, will give us a better gauge for them. Full transparency, I'm probably not moving Penn State into the penthouse until after the October 12th game, until we get to see them against USC. I just want to know that Drew Aller and Coach Koltanecki are making that ice cream consistently week in and week out. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, the new OC for Penn State compared his offensive philosophy to making ice cream. It's that basic stuff that you love. It's the vanilla, it's the chocolate, but then you make it a little more complex. You sprinkle some Oreos on there, you put some toppings on there, some M&Ms. No knock on whatever the ice cream preferences are for Coach Koltanecki, but that's just the way they get down at Penn State. I want to see it. Okay, I want to see it. Missouri, they're still on the bubble. I like Missouri a lot. I love Eli Drinkwitz. I love Luther Burden. I think he might be the best wide receiver in college football up there with Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona. Boston College game made me a little nervous now, I'm not going to lie. And Boston College is a good football team. All right? Even with that being said, to see them have to kick it into gear, you're like, okay, is this something that we're going to have to do on a consistent basis here for Missouri? Because I said it every single week, like they're replacing a lot of defensive production. They're replacing their defensive coordinator. They're replacing Cody Schrader. So there's a lot here that I think they're still finding their footing in. They host Vandy this week. Diego Pavia, all right? He's a problem when it comes to what he does, both running and throwing the football for Vanderbilt. It'll be a good test. I want to see Missouri, no knock on Vanderbilt, I want to see Missouri be definitive. Much like I said, I want to see Tennessee be definitive to move them up. I want to see Missouri be definitive here these next couple of weeks before we move them into that college football playoff penthouse. Now, USC, they can move up this week. All right, they can move up this week if they look against Michigan the way Texas looked against Michigan. And I had this takeout on my socials yesterday at JD Piquel, so follow me there if you want to stay up with all the coverage outside of the live show. But I had a takeout there, and I said, if USC is able to beat Michigan, then I think the optics around USC and their defense should change quite a bit. And the pushback I got on that was, well, hey, JD, like, let's be real here. Michigan, what are they really? This is not last year's Michigan team. That's 100% true, but I would say this, the DNA traits of what Michigan wants to be is still very much so. Smash mouth, run the football, win the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively. And so as much as Michigan doesn't have J.J. McCarthy at quarterback anymore, they don't have Roman Wilson at receiver anymore, they're still the bullies in the trenches. And so if USC can hold serve, and I'll say this, if they can definitively win in the Big House the way that Texas won definitively in the Big House, that would tell me a lot about how far that team has come under Lincoln Riley and how far that defense has come under Danton Lynn. I'm not worried about the fact that they're not going to be throwing it over their head at Michigan. I'm not worried about that. I'm concerned a little bit about how they look against those trenches, if you will. Kansas State, they're on the bubble. They're on the bubble for me this week. Avery Johnson is that dude. He is that dude. And I saw him play against Arizona. I think everybody did this past Friday. Salty defense, man. Salty. I mean, that was what we knew about them going into the year. The question was, well, hey, is Avery Johnson going to be able to elevate them to win the Big 12? I'll say this, what he does with his legs and what he's going to be able to do pushing the ball downfield, they're going to be a problem. They were on the wait list for us last week because I thought they were the third best team in the Big 12. From what I saw against Arizona, I'm pushing them up. Okay, that was decisive. That was exactly the brand of football you want to see if you're a Kansas State Wildcat fan. They're at BYU this week. A little bit sneaky now. Got to go to Provo. Say what you want about BYU. Got to go to Provo. That's not an easy place to play. And then you host Oklahoma State. So these next 2 weeks now, if Kansas State handles business, depending on what Oklahoma State does against Utah, could definitely see Kansas State move up to the college football playoff penthouse. So those are the teams that I have as of right now, living in Bubble Central. Not the worst place to be, still within striking distance. Some of these teams, I've said, I think they end up in the college football playoff, but from what we've seen during the season, need to see a little bit more before we have the confidence to say, hey, here's your room key, go ahead and kick it up in the playoff penthouse. Now, who's on the waiting list? All right, who's waiting in line to find their way into the college football playoff? And whenever we put this graphic out, there's always a lot of pushback because people see certain logos of teams that have lost early in the year. They say, what are they waiting on? What do you mean they're waiting in line to get into the college football playoff? Did you not just see them lose that game? Spoiler alert, Notre Dame is on this list for us. I'll start with them first. The reason why we have these teams waiting in line for the college football playoff is because it's no longer the 4-team model, no longer the BCS. You can lose one, heck, a lot of these teams' cases, 2 games, and still be in the dance. So maybe they don't have the inside track right now. Heck, maybe they need a little bit of help. Maybe it's unlikely when you look at the analytics. But even with that being said, just because you're waitlisted doesn't mean you're not going to find your way in. All right, now let's start with Notre Dame, like I just mentioned. Yes, they lost to NIU. Not worried about that. I'm not worried about that. They should be favored in every single game the rest of the way until they go to USC. I don't care about the NIU game. This roster, if Riley Leonard is able to find his rhythm, this defense, they're more than good enough to run the table, be a 10-2, 11-1 football team, and find their way in. And that would feel weird because we can't get the NIU game out of our mind, but I'm just telling you that is 110% a possibility for Notre Dame. Now, they got to bring it every single step of the way. They can't have that step back where you look great against A&M and then you go out and look very lackluster against NIU and kind of have a, can't duplicate that effort here the rest of the way. But I'm just saying now, Notre Dame, 1,010% is still a possibility for the college football playoff. How about LSU? Ton of grit this past weekend against South Carolina. I know there's a lot being said about referees and this, that, and the other. I'm like, hey, sidebar, referees, you get good calls, you get bad calls. There's going to be multiple times the rest of the year where South Carolina gets a few calls that breaks their way. Charge it to the game. It is what it is. Was encouraged by the grit, fighting back from 17 down. I don't have an issue with the LSU football team as much as I have an issue with their path when it comes to where I put them in this whole playoff tiers discussion. They have Ole Miss, at A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma still left on the schedule. They already have one loss. So using our logic here, you can't lose more than 2 of those games. Got to go 3-1 in that stretch. That's going to be a tall, tall task. So right now, LSU, I think, still waiting in line. They could make their way in, but I'm just saying I think the path to them is a little bit more tricky. Now, for Clemson, the path is not nearly as tricky. I have them waitlisted right now. The Georgia loss kind of sets back optics a little bit when you start having that discussion around where does Clemson fall with the college football playoff selection committee. If Clemson doesn't win the ACC, you wonder how much that gets factored in. But even with that being said, I think that, looking at their schedule, looking at the ACC, they have no Miami on the schedule. They have no Syracuse on the schedule. That Florida State game looks a lot different than it did a few months ago, as we've said now multiple times in a row, every single week. They have a chance to go now as far as this offense allows them to go. You saw them absolutely wax Appalachian State. That's a good sign. I think App State's a good G5 football team. We'll see. Big spot this week against NC State. NC State, again, that game doesn't look nearly as difficult as it did before the season as well. I like Clemson. Again, it's all about the offense, all about Cade Klubnik. We'll see. We'll see on Clemson. Oklahoma State, not a knock. I was just impressed by Kansas State. They have a chance to go as far as this offense allows them to go. I said that about Clemson. The same thing with Oklahoma State, though. If Ollie Gordon can get going, they'll be able to be multiple. We haven't seen him really break loose against formidable competition just yet. He's kind of been bottled up. But if there's a week for him to break out, it's the Utah week, which is, of course, this week when they come to your spot. If you're Oklahoma State and you believe that you are a college football playoff team, go prove that this week against who a lot of people believes to be the best team in the Big 12 in Utah. I keep saying it every week. I don't think there's going to be more than one team from the Big 12 that gets in. Translation, you got to win the conference to be in the college football playoff. So we'll see this week. Michigan, I know there's going to be a lot of things said about Michigan and their quarterback situation. I get it. I totally get it. Here's all I'm going to say. What if the strategy with Alex Orji playing quarterback for them is the answer? Okay, what if that's the strategy? Not saying that he's a better quarterback than Davis Ward, not saying he's a better quarterback than Jack Tuttle, but what if that strategy and that philosophy of, okay, we're just going to run the ball at you. We're going to control the clock. We're going to be a team that makes you play with us for 4 quarters. We keep it gross. We keep it right in the teens and the 20s. That could be the secret sauce for Michigan. This is not last year's team. We've said that multiple times. But you don't have to be last year's team. To me, you just got to find a way to beat Oregon and or Ohio State. I mean, you just got to split those two if you want to make your way into the dance. A 10-2 Michigan, if they can beat USC this week, which is obviously a major factor here as we talk about Michigan making the college football playoff, you got to go, I believe, 2-1. USC, Oregon, Ohio State. Can you do that? If you can, you're in the college football playoff. Again, I have my reservations, but we'll see. Now, here's a new team we added to the wait list here. New team that we're very excited to add to the wait list here. And that is our very own, I say our very own, Syracuse Fighting Fran Browns. Okay? Fran Brown's cooking something up now. They're up to something. And this is not just me projecting this because we have adopted Syracuse as a program of the program. Not just because we love Kyle McCord and him talking his cash on the sideline, saying what he thinks about Georgia Tech in some words that are not suitable for work. Y'all, they host Miami at the end of the year. I don't see another game on the schedule where I look at Syracuse and say, I don't know. That's going to be I think Syracuse probably should be in very good position to punch their ticket to Charlotte by the end of the year. Like, Fran Brown's got them playing a complete style of football. Kyle McCord's winging it all over the yard. Gadsden's one of the best, if not the best, tight end in all of college football, up there with Colston Loveland. This is a team now that can make a run at it. I would not be shocked in the slightest if Cam Ward and Miami roll into upstate New York. I'm calling it the Carrier Dome. I know it's the JMA Wireless Dome, whatever they're calling it now. To me, still the Carrier Dome. And they play that game. They shake hands. Whoever wins, they shake hands from across the field, and they dap each other up. Cristobal and Fran Brown say, we'll see you next week. And they run it back in the ACC title game. That is a possibility now. Okay, so Syracuse, I don't think they're on the bubble. I don't think they're in the playoff penthouse, but based on their schedule and what we've seen so far now in a small sample size, they got a chance. They got a chance in a wide-open ACC. So those are the teams we have when it comes to being waitlisted for the college football playoff. Now, I say this every week, man, but we talk a lot about the Power Four, and we talk about the automatic bids with winning the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 and the Big 10, and the G5 is hey, we get a bid too. Don't forget about us. So they're having a party. Let's check in on the G5 party. UNLV, look at it, UNLV. So inspirational. Not one, count them, two Power Four conference dubs. Both Houston and Kansas took the L to UNLV. UNLV could be a problem now. Could definitely be a problem. They will play Boise State a little bit later in the year at the Crib. That could be for a pole position kind of game for the Mountain West, and by that logic, it could be a pole position game for who ends up punching their ticket for the college football playoff. So keep an eye on UNLV. For me right now, they are the G5 rep when it comes to our college football playoff picture rankings. Boise State, I just mentioned them. They were off last week, but that showing against Oregon, even in defeat now, if they end up winning the Mountain West, which would mean that they'd probably have to go through a UNLV. If they win the Mountain West, I think that game against Oregon, a 3-point loss on a last-second field goal, as tough as they played them, that eye test should benefit them. Is that the differentiating factor? I don't know. They still have to handle business the rest of their schedule, but I think Boise State made a very strong case for them in the G5 in terms of getting that bid if they are the Mountain West Conference champion. They're going to host Washington State, and they go to UNLV, as I already mentioned. So those are the two games I have circled for Boise State. Still some meat on the bone for them when trying to build this college football playoff resume. Now, Memphis. How about Memphis, man? Undefeated, went to Florida State, got paid a smooth something like $1.3 million, got out of there with the dub. It was to me, it looked like domination with the way that they ran the football, with the way they operate offensively. Memphis now is going to be a problem. They are at Navy, and then later this year they're at USF. Navy's going to be a little bit tricky. Okay, they run that option, I understand that they've kind of revamped it, but still, defending the option, not always easy. And then going to USF, just ask Alabama. Not an easy task. USF, too. Keep an eye on USF. They're not in the G5 party this week, but we're keeping tabs on you. Don't worry. We're keeping tabs on USF, but Memphis, absolutely. Just hanging out, music blasted at the G5 kickback right now. One more team here, Liberty. Not the Insurance. It is, in fact, the Flames. They have a quarterback in Caden Salter, who is a Power 4 caliber player, and they have the most, I think, decisive path, or the most navigable path, to get to the college football playoff. The one game that I have circled for them is at Appalachian State. Got to go to Boone, North Carolina. Never an easy place to play. But if you got a quarterback, you got a chance, and I like Liberty a whole heck of a lot. If they're undefeated and they win the conference, it's going to be tough to not put them into the college football playoff. I'll say that much. One more team, not on the graphic here, but I think we need to at least mention them because I got a lot of kickback from y'all. NIU, yes, they beat Notre Dame. All about it. Let's just wait till Maction. Okay, I'm not out on NIU. I'm just saying let's wait till Maction because I think that's going to be an absolute battle royale. So we'll see what happens there. But to recap it for you here is our college football playoff tiers. Name, very much so, subject to change. In the playoff penthouse, teams we feel great about right now is Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. All about the U, man. They got some swag. Ole Miss looking how they're supposed to look in Utah. Utah now right on the edge there, but they are still in the college football playoff penthouse. Hanging out in Bubble Central now, you got Tennessee. Just want to see them pass that test, want to see them meet the parents, meet your friends, and then we can put them in the college football playoff penthouse if they look how they're supposed to look. Oregon, I liked what I saw. Is it a thing now where we see this Oregon team every single week? Remains to be seen, but I like Oregon. To me, they're on the bubble. Penn State, same deal. I want to see more. Missouri, game that didn't look as big as it did when we started the season. That's Vandy. It'll be a fun one. USC, they can move up with a definitive Texas-like win over Michigan, at Michigan. And then Kansas State, they're up in the wait list, but Avery Johnson now driving the Lavender Corvette like the broadcast told you about 18 million times from NIL. Like a wagon. To me, look like the second-best team in the Big 12. On the waiting list, they're not out, not dead. They're on the waiting list. LSU, Clemson, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Syracuse are still in there, so we'll keep an eye on the Cuse in the G5 party. You got UNLV, like I said, 2 Power 4 wins. Boise State, if they win the conference, they're going to have a very strong case. Memphis beating Florida State, and then Liberty have the most navigable, that's a tough word to say. I don't know why I try to say that on the air. Most navigable path to the college football playoff of any G5 team. Most workable schedule. So those are playoff tiers. Again, I'm asking you. I'm not begging yet, but I am asking you. Send me your name suggestions for that segment. Want it to be more fun, and playoff tiers just doesn't scream fun to me right now. But nonetheless, we move right along.